Hello, my 1585ers. Wow, let me tell you, you guys are in for a treat. It's the end of my night out here, and I've picked a route back that is going to show you how great of a job FSD can really do in a challenging environment. Part of this route I've been on before, not with FSD though, and part of the route is going to be totally new to me and to Tessie. So hang on, I got a little podcast that's going to be going, so that way you're not totally bored, and I will interject when there is craziness afoot. So I hope you can see this really well. So I hope you can see the whole road really well. I can't guarantee that there's going to be lights all the way through this trip, but hopefully my headlights are bright enough that you can see the whole route and you can see the whole map here as well. Actually, let me do this so you can really see that blue ribbon shows it is on FSD. 100% FSD.
And where did it happen?
There was no forced entry to the room. It didn't appear to be like a crime of passion or fury. This was a single stab wound directly into the heart.
Are ever solved. This is one of those rare stories. It's June 25th, 1982.
Struggle in the room. The TV was turned on and the volume was up a little loud. She was found lying on her back on the bed. One of her arms was kind of twisted around behind her back. She was only wearing a t-shirt, and she was lying in a pool of blood.
Police identify the body as that of 32-year-old Lee Rotatori.
Lee was the oldest, born in 49. I was the second, born in 50. My brother Thomas, he was born in 56. And Ann is the baby of the family, born in 57.
Just to interject, I don't know if you saw on the screen there, but it no longer is recognizing, or it's no longer visually monitoring my attention. So I'm going to have to touch the wheel from time to time until it finally does see that I'm alive and well.
Ann Chin is Lee Rotatori's sister.
Lee was about 8 years older than me. She was fun-loving. She liked to ride horses. She tried some of her hand at painting.
We did go.
So there's my first difficulty, what I would call a wart. This is an 80-kilometer-an-hour stretch, and you see there's a vehicle coming up behind me very quickly, and FSD was trotting along at 60, 63, 64, just went up now. Anyways, what can you do when you live in a shoe, right? The other thing I want you to keep an eye out for is these matrix headlights are absolutely amazing. You can see there how evenly they are set. Just went into a high beam. It's very, very flattened out. Gives you a very sharp view of this whole area. I don't know what the hang is flashing over there. It's flashing orange, not like white lightning. Anyway, that was lightning. It's almost like it struck a transformer or something. Okay, so if a vehicle comes towards us, you'll see that over here, the pixels will go out. So you'll be able to see the ground or the road looking very, very dark, like it should be at night. And then after the vehicle passes, it'll brighten up again. So it's really, really crazy to watch how accurate it is. And if you're following behind another car, your high beams stay on, but the car's not being blinded by your lights. Just amazing. Now you can see, even though I got to touch the wheel, it's still in full self-drive. It hasn't come out at all. But I'll try to keep my hand close just to keep it rolling.
To a lot of rifle matches in town, or we travel, take a car ride.
Beautifully done.
Equipment as we're coming home.
She enjoyed cooking, and at one point when the nutritionist wanted to put her on a diet so she could lose weight, and Lee said, I'll lose the weight and I'll learn how to do it myself.
Lee studies cooking and nutrition at the University of Wisconsin. She earns a master's degree and then finds work as a dietitian. In 1978, Lee meets Jerry Nemke.
She had lost a lot of weight and her clothes were kind of baggy, and Jerry met her and was curious about this gal that was wearing these clothes that were too big for her.
Jerry, he was a nice individual. He and Lee seemed to hit it off good together.
Lee and Jerry get married and settle in Nunicum, Michigan. They live in a mobile home, and Lee buys a horse that she stables at a nearby farm. In 1982, Lee is offered a promotion. It's a great opportunity, but it means the couple will have to move 600 miles away to Council Bluffs, Iowa.
The position in Council Bluffs, becoming a head dietitian at the facility there, was a major step up for her. Added responsibility, having direct reports.
Lee moves to Council Bluffs, with Jerry soon to follow with their mobile home. But just days after she starts her new job,
right here
Lee's
is a
life
beautiful overlooking view of the city below.
They
It's a beautiful observation spot.
Across her mouth and across her eyes. They could see that there appeared to be ligature marks around her wrist, making it appear that the suspect had not only taped her mouth and her eyes, but had also bound her wrists behind her back. They also noted that the tape had been removed from her mouth as well as her eyes, and whatever it was that the suspect used to bind her wrists had also been removed from the room. They did not find a murder weapon in the room or outside the room.
There was a high possibility there was some sexual contact made, but nobody knew at that time whether that was by force or whether that was consensual.
They did a sexual assault kit on Lee. Detectives then placed that item in the police property. Her bag was stolen, but the room wasn't ransacked. It was almost like an afterthought, or like, maybe let's try to make this look like a robbery. They just grabbed the stuff and walked off with it. The investigators tested for fingerprints. There were several prints that were found throughout the room. They also collected bed sheets, linens, the clothing that they collected from Lee. There was not a lot of physical evidence.
I remember that room was very clean and very neat, and nothing in that room other than her body led you to believe anything was wrong.
Investigators believe that Lee's murder has all the markings of a professional hit.
There was no forced entry to the room. It didn't appear to be like a crime of passion or fury, where there was a multiple stab wounds in the face, the arms, the neck. This was a single stab wound directly into the heart.
Just past a beautiful little skunk.
Death. Nothing more, nothing less. It looked like the guy knew what he was doing.
Detectives do find something strange. Pieces of green foam scattered across the floor, the kind used by florists.
They estimated approximately 100 pieces of this green foam. They located that on the floor just past the entrance of the room, like it had been maybe dropped on the floor there when the perpetrator came into the room. If you have an anomaly like that, it's odd. It sticks out. It's not supposed to be there. You need to find out where it came from, why it's there, how it got there. One of the housekeepers noted that she recalled seeing similar green foam on the second floor outside of room 259 and inside room 259 as well. You've got this green foam in room 106 where Lee was found that shouldn't be there, and then you've got it in another location in close proximity at the same time frame. It's not a smoking gun, but it's getting close. You have this crushed floral foam that may have been dropped by the perpetrator, and then you discovered that there was another location for this mysterious green foam. You can see the excitement that you would have in getting a lead like that. The housekeeper took the detectives up to that area and showed her where she had found the foam.
However, housekeeping has already cleaned room 259.
They went through all of the vacuum cleaner bags, and they dug through a lot of dirt and a bunch of other stuff, but ultimately they were never able to recover any of the
Weird
actual
little construction
foam.
here.
They did make contact with the individual who rented that room, and they did bring him in and interview him.
Handled quite
He
well.
said that he had checked into the room 259 24th. They described him as disreputable. They said that he was carrying what appeared to be a bouquet of flowers, but they also noted that it didn't appear to be a professional bouquet of flowers. They described the gentleman as a white male, 30s to 40-year-old, medium build, medium weight, dark hair color. One of them had him with gray hair, kind of a reddish complexion.
Detectives look for motel guests who matched their sketch and stayed there the night of Lee's murder.
The hotel was literally packed with people. The detective collected the registry for every guest at the hotel, but nothing stood out in there as somebody that's like, yeah, this is somebody to look at. The location of the hotel is right in the crosshairs of the United States. We have I-29 that runs north and south from North Dakota down to Missouri, and I-80 runs east and west from San Francisco to New Jersey. So the detectives at the time were on the scene roughly 12 hours later or so. You can go a long way in 12 hours in any direction, so you have no idea which way the suspect may have went, or if he went anywhere at all.
6 days after her body is discovered, Lee's remains are transported back to her hometown of Rochester, Minnesota, so she can be laid to rest.
Mom and Dad went to the First Presbyterian Church, which is the church we all went to when I was growing up. Spoke to the pastor about having the funeral, and the sanctuary was packed.
It was very heartwarming. It was probably the first funeral I attended, and it was joyful.
Back in Iowa, police seek answers as to who would want Lee dead.
Lee was the epitome of the innocent victim. She wasn't out doing anything questionable. She was a well-educated woman with a good job who came here to start a new life. She was away from her home, away from her family. She came to our city and was subsequently murdered a few days later.
Murder is rare in Council Bluffs, but one recent killing is eerily similar to Lee's case.
A couple of months prior to the incident with Lee, there was an incident at a local hotel, the Starlight Motor Lodge, where a female by the name Melinda Mayfield was murdered. She was stabbed to death at the motel in close proximity to the other hotel. If you have one female being stabbed to death in a hotel in one part of your town, and you have another female that ends up getting stabbed to death in another part of the town, you want to look at that. There might be this connection.
Have you ever noticed that purple shop pay button when you're shopping online? I can't tell you how many times.
Okay, here starts a nice little stretch.
I've been lying in bed, scrolling through a new site, adding things to my cart, and just as I'm about to bail because my cart is in the other room, I see that purple shop pay button. One tap and done. Checkout's finished. I never even have to leave my blanket cocoon. That's Shopify in action, and it's not just making shopping easier, it's making it easier than ever to start your own business too. Shopify is the commerce platform behind 10% of all e-commerce in the US, powering brands from household names like Mattel and Gymshark to businesses just getting started. And if you're thinking about launching something of your own, Shopify gives you a leg up from day one with hundreds of beautiful, ready-to-go templates, no coding required. You can tackle everything in one place, from inventory to payments to analytics
Matrix
and
lights,
more.
watch this.
Plus,
Look
Shopify's
at
built-in
the
marketing and email
pixels
tools
going
help
out
you
already.
find and keep new customers. And let's not forget that iconic purple Shopify
And boom,
button
back
used by
on.
millions of businesses worldwide. It's the reason Shopify has the best converting checkout on the planet. Your customers already love it, and you will too. Start your business with Shopify today. If you want to see less carts being abandoned, it's time for you to head over to Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/coldcase. Go to shopify.com/coldcase. Shopify.com/coldcase.
One of my favorite little spots to go through. And as you notice there, FSD does not stop for big moths. That was a huge moth, but FSD didn't even recognize that it was a thing. But luckily it actually landed in the middle of my lane, so we would have went over top of it. It should be okay. But look at this little road. I love this. I need to do this on the motorcycle and get you another video on the motorcycle with the nice little leans and rolling into these corners. It'll be something.
Cold Case Files is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Because Progressive offers discounts for paying in full, owning a home, and more. Plus, you can count on their great customer service to help you when you need it, so your dollar goes a long way. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save on car insurance. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states or situations.
Based on the evidence at the scene, the person that killed Lee came there with the specific intent of killing her. If somebody had gone through the effort to plan something like this, who's to say that they hadn't done it before or would do it again? They started to look at any potential for this being a serial killing. They reached out to area agencies locally. The FBI was even contacted in reference to any serial killers operating in and around this area.
Investigators compare the murders of Lee Rotatori and Linda Mayfield. They find the cases are not so similar after all.
Lee was murdered with a single stab wound, as to where Linda Mayfield was stabbed multiple times, literally from head to toe. She was found outside the hotel room at the bottom of the stairs, where Lee was found inside the hotel room. So it was ruled out as a similar.
Wow, this is a beautiful test road for FSD. I don't know if you saw that. Rewind and take a look at that. There was a couple of branches that were sticking right out into the road, and FSD calmly just passed them without hitting them. It was magical. Wow. FSD for the win right there, I'll tell you. This double stop thing, though, has got to get addressed. It slows down to just about zero, so anybody behind you thinks you're stopped and ready to go. Then you start to roll again, and then you slow right down to zero, and then off you go. Now, it doesn't happen all the time, but it happens like, I don't know, 40%? Yeah, about 40% of the time when it comes to any kind of a stop. Wow. Anyway, other than that, I mean, that's a first world problem, but it is annoying, especially when there's somebody following you, because they think you're going to go and they hit their accelerator, and then all of a sudden you're stopping again, and it's like, is this person brake checking me? Or I'm sure it kind of confuses people.
MO.
Detectives turn to the physical evidence collected at the scene and process the fingerprints found in Lee's motel room.
Some of the prints lack sufficient ridge detail to be checked. The ones that did have sufficient ridge details were checked with no results. The medical examiner determined that there had been a sexual assault. You got to remember, though, that back in '82, DNA was not really a thing. You had it, but you didn't know what you had.
After 11 days of investigation, detectives broaden their search. They turn their attention to Lee's husband, Jerry Nemke, and uncover a bombshell.
It was learned that Jerry was convicted of murder back in 1960. So they start digging into Jerry.
The victim in that case was 16-year-old Marilyn Duncan.
It took place in a deserted lot behind a factory in Chicago, and it was just brutal. It sounded like Jerry had made some sexual advances on Marilyn. Marilyn refuted those advances, and he punched her until he knocked her down to the ground. At that point, he kicked her all over the body. He kicked her so many times that the toes on his shoes had curled backward. If that wasn't enough, there were some bricks that were laying around there. He picked those bricks up and he started beating her body with those bricks. To add insult to injury, he said that he stole $4 from her because that's all she had on her. He left her there to die in the lot, and she did ultimately succumb to those injuries a few days later.
Police catch Nemke in a stolen car and arrest him. They connect him to Marilyn's murder through a pair of sunglasses he left at the scene.
When he was questioned, he confessed to the murder of Marilyn Duncan. After his initial trial, he was found guilty of murder and he was sentenced to death. Jerry filed an appeal. There was a retrial in reference to the obtaining of his confession that he had provided to police at the time of his arrest in 1960. His confession was ultimately thrown out, and even without his confession, Jerry was again found guilty of the murder of Marilyn Duncan. At that point, he was sentenced to 75 to 100 years in prison.
Despite the brutality of the crime and the lengthy sentences, Jerry Nemke is released from prison in 1978, just 18 years after killing Marilyn Duncan.
Why Jerry was released so soon? I have no idea. Getting records of any of this stuff has been extremely difficult. And the records that I do get are so old and they're handwritten, and the quality of them are such that you can hardly even read them. But when you have a guy that does something like this, he was like a poster child for a suspect.
Detectives focus on Lee and Jerry's relationship.
Jerry gets out of prison in 1978. He marries Lee in 1978, within, months after being released from prison. A year or two later, they file for divorce. Another year or two later, they get remarried again. There was another statement that Jerry had made a comment about getting a divorce so he could file for bankruptcy, and then he was going to remarry her. I don't know if it was a troubled relationship or if it was a plan to get out of a bunch of debt.
Lee and Jerry remarry just 6 months before she's killed.
Jerry had 2 jobs at the time. He worked at a service station, and he also was a floral delivery person. To have Jerry being a part-time floral delivery person and to have crushed up green floral foam on the floor inside Lee's room where she was murdered.
It was about to slow down to 50 kilometers an hour, hitting a highway that runs at 90. That's been a problem for a while, has not yet been solved.
That cannot be a coincidence. Very quickly, the detectives reached out to Jerry's employers to try to establish his whereabouts for the time frame of Lee's murder. In talking to the owner of the service station, he was able to confirm that Jerry was at work with him in Michigan until at least 10 o'clock in the evening. The same gentleman is also able to state that he personally saw Jerry at around 9 that following morning doing his floral delivery service. There were multiple people who also saw Jerry during the time frame of Lee's murder as well.
Jerry Nemke was 10 hours away when Lee was murdered.
I knew that Jerry was imprisoned for murder. I know that he was working with juveniles to help keep them from becoming imprisoned. I think he had been reformed.
I really had no issues with Jerry Nemke. When I heard Jerry had a solid alibi, I eliminated him as a suspect, and I was satisfied with that.
By 1983, detectives have run down their last good lead, and the case goes cold.
During family gatherings, we didn't talk about Lee as often. It was too painful to reminisce.
the way I coped with my sister's death and not knowing who the perpetrator was suppressed. I think the emotion of loss of family struck me and stayed with me. And then it also continued to my parents passing.
Lee's parents go to their graves still searching for justice. It's now June 2011, 29 years after Lee's murder.
I was sitting at my desk one day and my sergeant came in and he plopped this box on my desk and said, hey, you're kind of a go-getter. There's been some advances in DNA that have happened recently. Why don't you look into this? And that's how it all began. Once I realized that we do have a male DNA sample, my thought at the time is I need to go back, revisit the main suspects in this case. I started with Jerry. I knew he had an ironclad alibi, but I knew his history. The hair on the back of your neck stands up when you read this stuff, and you're like, yeah, this guy knows more. There must be a connection somehow. I found him in Tampa, Florida, so I contacted the detectives down in Tampa, and a couple of homicide detectives went to his place. They said he was pretty nonchalant about the whole thing. He more than willingly just provided a DNA sample, and then we ran it in for testing. I knew that he was 10 hours away, but there was that glimmer of hope. Maybe he chartered an airplane and flew here and flew back home. The results came back on Jerry's DNA, and I saw that the result was negative. It was like a punch in the stomach.
Investigators track down every previous suspect they can find and run DNA tests on all of them. But there's no match.
This was 40 years ago, and when I would try to reach out to people, they were off the grid or they were deceased. There weren't any leads. The captain comes to me one day and said he was watching a special about the Golden State Killer. He was caught using genetic genealogy, and I was like, I'm totally on board. I didn't have any other options.
The suspect DNA is submitted for genetic analysis, and a long list of possible matches to Lee's killer comes back. Katie Patty is a Council Bluffs Police Department forensics detective.
Our initial response was an enormous family lineage that was literally printed out, and it was 6 feet long along one of our detectives' desks.
They also provide us with a kind of a solvability matrix, a scale of 1 to 5. 1 is, yep, no problem. We're going to find this guy. 5 being, don't waste your time. You're certainly not going to find him through genetic genealogy. They gave us a 4.5 on the scale. The light at the end of the tunnel is starting to flicker out because it's like, I don't know if we're going to find this now.
I'm looking at that huge family lineage like, oh boy, where do we even start here? This is going to take forever.
It was daunting. I'm back to square one and I have no hope at this point.
In 2019, Jerry Nemke passes away. Any information he may have had about Lee's murder dies with him. It looks like Lee's case will never be solved. Then investigators find hope from an unlikely source, genealogist Eric Schubert.
When I was a kid, I had asthma a lot. So it would be pneumonia every October, November, like clockwork. I was 10 years old, stuck at home, bored. I just saw a commercial one day for...
Well, you 1585ers, I hope you enjoyed a good portion of that route. And of course, like I said, I never hide the warts that come with FSD. We just know that it keeps on getting better and better and better. So, to me, I would give that drive probably a 9 out of 10. Only because that reduced speed to 50 coming onto a 90-kilometer road with vehicles on that road, that's a safety concern. So, I mean, of course, I'm supervising, so I caught it right away and got us up to proper speed. But, yeah, that was a safety concern. So, 9 out of 10 it is. Folks, stay safe. Stay healthy, and above all, stay as happy as humanly possible. And remember, us 1585ers, we never give up. We never give in. But we do keep an open mind, because that's how we gather our